Okay, picture this. You just checked into your Airbnb. Maybe it's a weekend getaway, maybe it's a business trip. You drop your bags, kick off your shoes, and start to unwind. Then you spot it. A tiny camera tucked away on a bookshelf, or maybe a blinking light on a smoke detector that wasn't there before. And suddenly that cozy feeling? Gone. You're wondering, wait, am I being watched right now? You're not alone. This exact fear has blown up online in the last few years, from TikToks going viral with horror stories to real lawsuits filed by guests who discovered hidden surveillance in their rentals. According to a survey by IPX 1031, about 58% of Airbnb guests say they worry about hidden cameras in their rentals, and nearly 1 in 10 say they've actually found one. So if you've ever asked, can Airbnb hosts legally have cameras inside their property? Or what are my rights if I find one? You're in the right place. Because today we're diving deep into what the law actually says about surveillance in Airbnbs, what hosts can and can't do legally, and what you should do if you ever find a camera where it shouldn't be. All right, so let's break it down. Here's the thing. Hosting a short-term rental comes with responsibilities. Just because it's your property doesn't mean you can do whatever you want when someone else is paying to stay there. And yes, that includes surveillance. Now let's clear something up. In the US, it's not illegal across the board for hosts to use cameras. In fact, many do, for perfectly legitimate reasons, like protecting the property, monitoring entrances, or preventing parties. Some hosts live in cities where Airbnb rentals are heavily regulated, and they're required to verify how many people are staying, or whether guests are throwing unauthorized events. Cameras in exterior areas or common spaces, if they are disclosed, are often part of that monitoring. But, and this is a big but, there are rules. Big, serious, legal rules. Airbnb itself has a policy about this. Hosts are allowed to have cameras in common areas, like living rooms or patios, only if they're clearly disclosed in the listing. We're talking super obvious, not buried in the fine print, and absolutely no cameras in private spaces like bedrooms or bathrooms, period. Even if the host owns the place, even if it's their personal security system. Why? Because there's a thing called reasonable expectation of privacy under US law. When you rent a place, even for one night, you have a legal right to assume that certain areas are off limits to surveillance. Think of it like this. If you're changing clothes, using the bathroom, or sleeping, the law generally protects you from being watched, even if you signed up for a stay on a private property. And here's where things can get legally spicy. If a host places a hidden camera in a private area, like a bedroom, without telling you, they could be violating state laws around wiretapping, video voyeurism, or invasion of privacy. Some states like Florida, California, and New York have really strict laws about this. In some cases, it's even considered a felony. Let me give you a real example. In 2022, a couple staying in an Airbnb in Texas found a hidden camera disguised as a phone charger pointing directly at their bed. When they reported it, law enforcement launched an investigation, and the host was charged with invasive visual recording, a serious offense under Texas law. And Airbnb, they banned him for life. And get this, there have even been cases where guests found out their conversations were being recorded. That's a whole other level of illegal because once audio enters the equation, we're talking about wiretap laws. Some states are one-party consent states, meaning only one person in the conversation needs to know it's being recorded. But others require all parties to consent. If a host is secretly recording sound in a private space, that could land them in prison. Let me rehook you here for a second. Maybe you're not a host. Maybe you're a traveler who's just gotten more paranoid than ever. Here's a quick gut check. Do you know how to spot a hidden camera? Like, really spot one? Because they're getting better. Some look like clocks. Others are built into motion detectors or air purifiers. I've even seen ones embedded in screws. Yes, screws. So let's walk through what you can do. If you're staying at a rental, start with a sweep of the space. Turn off the lights and slowly scan the room with your phone's camera. Many hidden cameras emit infrared light that your eyes can't see, but your phone can pick up. You're looking for tiny red or purple dots. Also check anything that's oddly placed, like a smoke detector pointed directly at a bed, or an alarm clock that seems to have a second lens. You can even use apps designed to detect radio frequencies or hidden devices, although results vary. And here's the big one. Trust your gut. If something feels off, don't ignore it. Document everything. Take photos, record video, and contact Airbnb support immediately. They have a dedicated safety team that handles these kinds of issues. Let's add another layer here. Not all surveillance is visual. We mentioned audio earlier, but it's worth repeating because it's often overlooked. Audio recording laws are even stricter than video in many places. While it might seem less invasive at first glance, audio can capture private conversations, business dealings, even legal discussions. That's why many states treat unauthorized audio surveillance as a much more serious crime. Also, don't forget about shared Wi-Fi networks. Some hosts have been accused of using smart home devices, like Alexa or Google Home, to monitor guests indirectly. These devices may not look like cameras, but they can be triggered by sound, store voice commands, and sometimes even send notifications when noise levels spike. If a host leaves these devices plugged in, especially without disclosing it, that could create legal and ethical issues. If you're ever unsure, unplug them. You're allowed to. Let's zoom out again. This issue isn't just about Airbnb, it's about the whole short-term rental economy. VRBO, Booking.com, even small independent vacation rentals, they're all grappling with this tension between host rights and guest privacy. And lawmakers are catching up. Some cities have begun requiring hosts to register surveillance devices with their rental license or include exact camera locations in their listings. And as for guests who feel something is off, document first, then act. Always start by gathering evidence. If the host denies having cameras after you found one, keep your cool and let the platform handle the situation. Don't rip the device out of the wall or confront the host aggressively. That can make things worse. You want to stay on the right side of the process so your case is taken seriously. For extra protection, consider traveling with a small privacy kit. Yes, that's a thing. They're cheap online and usually include a lens detector, a signal scanner, and some outlet blockers. Think of it as your travel-sized version of peace of mind. Let's also address another question that comes up a lot. What about hosts who live on the property? Do they get more leeway because it's technically still their home? The answer: no. Not when it comes to areas rented out to guests. If you're listing a separate room or section of your home, the rules still apply. The minute money changes hands and someone else is staying there, those guests have legal rights, period. So, hosts, if you're listening, the best thing you can do is be overly transparent. Not just with Airbnb, but with your guests. Make it part of your welcome message. Include a note in the house manual. Let guests know you respect their privacy and are following all laws. Believe it or not, that builds trust and leads to better reviews. And if you're worried about damage or theft, that's what Airbnb's host guarantee is for. They offer up to $1 million in property damage protection, and it doesn't require violating your guest's privacy to use it. Now, let's talk enforcement. What happens if a guest finds a camera and files a complaint? Airbnb says they take this seriously. In most cases, they'll refund the guest, relocate them, and investigate the host. If they find a violation, that host can be permanently removed from the platform, but that's just the platform's response. Criminal prosecution? That's up to local authorities. And like I mentioned earlier, the charges can be severe. In some states, even attempting to record someone in a private space without consent is a felony. So here's where we land. The tech is getting smaller, sneakier, and easier to hide. But the law is catching up. And if you're smart, whether you're hosting or traveling, you'll stay ahead of the curve. If you remember nothing else from this episode, let it be this. Cameras in bedrooms and bathrooms are never okay. Disclosure isn't optional. It's required, and you have the right to feel safe wherever you lay your head at night. Quick heads up again. This is just legal information, not legal advice. If you've got a specific situation, it's always best to talk to a licensed attorney. Until next time, stay informed, stay safe, and we'll catch you in the next one.